grab a wood dowel rod that is 1 1/8 inch in diameter and a set of 2 wood finials. On the end of each of the dowel rods, drill a hole that is centered and about an inch deep. Take both the dowel rod and the 2 finials and spray paint them in a color of your choosing. It works best if you spray several light coats for even coverage. Once everything is dry, screw in the finials to the end of the rod to make sure they fit. Now take a couple of simple J-hooks. Take a couple of wrenches and pull so the J-hook opening is just a little bit wider. Now take these J-hooks and screw them into the wall with a drill above a window. You may need to use a screwdriver to tighten them into the wall. To give your room a sense of added height, place the hooks so they are closer to the ceiling rather than closer to the window. With one finial removed from the dowel rod, thread 2 curtain panels onto the rod and then screw the finial back on. Hang the drapery rod and curtain panels onto the J-hooks in the wall. Depending on the size of your window, you may need to hang 1 or 2 of the curtain tabs on the outside edge of the J-hooks so the curtain looks even across the top of the rod. You now have a classic drapery rod for hanging curtains for just a few dollars and very little invested time.
I have this window in my studio office and I decided it needed some fresh curtains. I picked up this one-step tie-dye kit from my local Walmart. It had some really cool ombre pastel colors that I wanted to try. And since I only need the powder for this DIY, I'm going to save the rest of the kit for something else. So I rigged up this setup here with just 2 ladders and a piece of wood, and then I laid my polyester curtain over top. Then I began to place some ice blocks on top of the wood and the curtain, just along running down. I bought a bag of ice, so some of the chunks are bigger than others, but it really doesn't matter. So I just wanted to make sure there were no gaps and there was ice fully covering the whole piece of wood on top of the curtain. Then I began to dump out my powdered dye over top of the ice. I tried to do this as evenly as possible, making sure that all the ice was covered with powdered dye. I used all the colors in the kit and spread them out across the entire plank of wood. Now the easy part is just to sit back and let the sun melt the ice and see what kind of colored patterns come out. So where I am right now, I'm in Canada, and it was actually 33 degrees Celsius this day, so the ice was melting at a pretty rapid rate. But upon standing back and watching it, I saw that I did have some large spots of dye just kind of clumping and sitting in one area. So I did add a bit more ice around, and I did actually also pour some water over the ice to kind of allow those clumpy parts to drip down so that I wouldn't get big blocks of color. When I started watching it, I had my piece of wood tilted. I thought it would create a cool design, but I decided that I really actually didn't like the way the colors were kind of floating down towards one end of the curtain. So I did decide to level it out halfway through just by lowering the wood down on a different rung on my ladder, making it more even to allow the color to evenly displace down my curtain. Once the ice is completely melted, you just take your curtain off your piece of wood and then just place it in the dryer till it's dry. This is a polyester curtain that I'm using here. Upon doing the project, if I had to do it again, I would probably use a 100% cotton curtain. I believe that the colors would absorb a lot better because as the sun melted the ice, it also kind of changed the color of the dye. So the salmon color and the butterscotch that were in the kit actually kind of faded out with the sun, and I was just left with the blue. But honestly, I think it's actually really light and delicate, and I think it's a perfect fit for this window. So I now have these super ice blue kind of ombre dyed curtains, and I think they turned out really well considering this was a very cheap, inexpensive DIY to do. The dye kit only cost me $8 and the curtain was $4 from my local dollar store. Then just add a bag of ice and that's all you need for this project. I hope that this encourages you to get creative with ice dye and see what kind of colors and patterns that you can come up with.
This is what I'm going to be using. These are some inexpensive curtains that I picked up from Amazon. I'm just going to move them to one side. They're quite long. The size on these, I can't actually see the size, but we don't worry about that. They're long curtains for a full length room sizing. And I am going to be painting this or something similar to this. This is an image I found just on the internet. Unfortunately, I don't know the source, otherwise I would absolutely credit them. We're going to be painting something like this onto these white curtains. I have taken the curtains out of the bag and I have actually ironed them. So the first thing I'm going to do is get them ready so we can actually start to paint. So when painting these curtains, I don't want to start at the very bottom of the curtain because sometimes we like to have that little bit of puddling on our curtains, they puddle on the floor, or sometimes we might want to shorten them a little bit. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to take a ruler and very, very technical here. I'm just going to mark a line in pencil around about 16 inches from the bottom of the curtain. I'm going to do that all the way along, just sporadically. It's just a rough guide. It's not absolutely necessary to be 100% accurate. So that is the very first step of this process. The paint that I'm going to be using for this project is Dixie Belle Chalk Mineral Paint, and the reason I'm using that is because I really like the way that it flows with water when I wet the actual fabric. It's also washable, so it's not going to wash away when you wash the curtains, and I can heat set it too. So the colours that I'm using today, we have got Daisy, Limeade, Florida Orange, Flamingo, Dixie Belle Blue, Mint Julep, Kudzu, Tree Frog Green and Peony. And I'm also towards the end going to be using this slightly darker colour, Coffee Bean. Now, how am I going to actually do this? Well, this is a technique. I told you it was to do with watercolour. So I have got my trusty mister. I have put my line that I created just before right here. And I'm going to just get these things ready because the first thing I'm going to do is take my little template that I have. I'm going to work roughly towards, I'm going to draw on here. I'm going to start off, I think we might start off with this little Mr. Cactus here and see if we can do something with that. So I'm going to start at the bottom where my line is and round about here. This is very, very rough. And these lines that I'm drawing with a pencil, this is not at all a lesson about staying inside the lines. We actually don't really want to stay inside the lines with this one. We're actually quite happy to go outside the lines and see a little bit of blurring, a little bit of mess. So hopefully you can see that showing up on the camera. It's a very, very rough, very, very, very simple shape that I've created on here, similar to this shape that is on here. So the next step, I am going to take my water mister and I'm going to absolutely saturate. I'm just going to do the main part of the main body of the cacti first. And absolutely saturate it so it's nice and wet because we want the paint to kind of dissipate and dissolve and not have that absolutely perfect finish. Next step, I'm going to take my brushes and I'm going to work with a fairly large flat brush and it's saturated. It's very, very, very wet. And then, and I'm hopefully going to manage this without making a mess on my paint, on my curtain, I'm going to take, we'll start off with, I think, the yellow. So I'm going to put a little bit of that on the brush and then I'm going to dip my brush in the water. Hopefully you can see that. So it's very, very wet. And I am going to take it and I'm going to literally paint directly onto the canvas here. There we go. So we are just having very, very wet, wet, wet paint on here. And I am dipping my brush in the water and I'm just pulling this along. I'll take a little bit more paint, a little bit more water, and we'll pull this down here to create the first edge of our first cactus plant in this process. Now, if I wanted a little bit more fuzzy and fluffy, I can add a little bit more water to this. And I'm actually painting, the surface that I'm painting on is a waterproof surface. So the water is just going to sit underneath. It's not going to dissolve into the surface. So there we go. There's our first part. A little bit more paint and a little bit more water just down at the bottom here. Here we go. So next step, I think I might take a little bit of that mint julep, this beautiful minty colour. Again, very, very wet brush into the water. And here we go. Here we go, all the way down here. I'm just going to pull this brush round and down and just keep that water coming. A little bit more paint, a little bit more water. So every single time I add paint to my brush, I dip it in the water, pull it down here. Now, actually, if I were to spill or drip some paint onto a different part of the curtain whilst I'm doing this, it really wouldn't matter because we almost want, and you can see it's just happening here, we want this almost haloing effect. It's like a watercolour style. I'm going to give it another squirt just here, and I'm going to add, because we want these colours to kind of meld into each other, some of the Tree Frog Green. I'm going to pull that around this outside here. So that's a much, much brighter green, you can see straight away. And now I'm going to actually mix some tree frog and some kudzu in some water and pull that down here. And we're just going to keep painting using water for a second, a bit like going back to grade school. So much fun. Let's have a little bit more of the tree frog, a little bit more water. We'll pull that down. And there you go. Look, see, I've made a little splodge there, but that's okay. You won't even see that when we're done. So let me carry on doing this and we'll come back in 1 second when I've completed my first cactus. So step 1 of our first cactus on this little montage of cacti is complete for the first step. It's very, very wet, so I'm just going to go underneath and just wipe away any paint that's leaked through, and I'm just going to move it to one side so we can just unroll our curtain here. So the next one that I'm going to do, I kind of love this guy here, so I think that's probably the one that I'm going to do, and he is next to this one in this picture. So let me do that. So it's got a nice kind of fat bottom bit here, almost like a heart without the point in it. There we go. And then we have a side bit of cactus here, another fat one, a kind of Mickey Mouse shape here. Let's do that. Mickey Mouse with bigger ears. And then we have another big fat guy right around here. See, it's very simple. The shapes are entirely up to you, very straightforward. I'm hoping that's showing up on camera. And I'm going to do exactly the same process on this that I did on our first one, and I'm going to fill this in with paint. So come back to me in a moment when I've painted that and it's dried, and we will start to do our little bits of outlining. Okay, so our cacti has now dried. It's still slightly damp, it's not 100% dry because I still want to have a little bit of that kind of movement within the paint. I'm going to take this is a flat paintbrush, just a small one, and I'm going to be using both the end of the paintbrush and the paintbrush itself to create some prickles on these cacti. So going back to my inspiration picture, so this guy here is kind of like this one, so I'm going to work with that. So I think I'm going to use the dots for this. So what I'm going to do, I've got Dixie Belle here in Coffee Bean, and I have just put paint right on the end of my brush, on the wrong end of my brush I should say, and I am just going to do some dots. See how they give really nice, really cool, perfect circles, and they just fade out a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing here, just working my way down, and I'm just referencing back to this image every so often just to remind me where those dots should go. Here we go. There's no such thing as perfection in this. I absolutely think you could do this with the kids. I think this would be a really fun way for them to get really involved in creating their own designs for their own bedrooms. You could do this on cushion covers, pillow covers. You could do this on napkins, pretty much any kind of soft fabric. You could do this on watercolor paper or on just canvas for art if you wanted to. So there we go. I'm going to go with that. And a few little ones in the top there. Then I'm going to flip my brush over, and I am going to do some larger kind of prickles on this cacti guy here. So I'm just going to go, let's start just on the edges, just completely random. I'm not really worried, and there's no specific spacing in between. And the flat end of the brush is what I'm using on the outside, which is where you would see the prickle standing up if it were a real true life cacti. So let me complete those, but before I do that, I'm just going to show you that I'll be doing the end version on the inside of this. So we're doing those dots in here as well. Just very random, nothing specific. I'm going to carry on doing that, and when I move on to the larger cactus, I'll show you how we do the lines down the middle. Now I'm going to add some lines to my cacti here. This is using a very, very slightly wet brush, again, that flat brush, and this is using that dark brown colour, the Coffee Bean from Dixie Belle. And again, I'm wetting my brush, just adding a tiny, tiny bit of water, and I'm just going to kind of come, not adding too much delineation, not too much detail. I really don't want too much on here at all. And then I'm just going to come down and around here, and we're just kind of making that, press a little bit harder there so it's slightly thicker. I'm just trying to follow those lines that are on this very pretty little drawing. I wish I knew who had done this so that I could credit them. Unfortunately, and then I'm going to just give some outline to my cacti, just generally, nothing very heavy, just very, very light lines, just to kind of give it a little bit of definition once it's up actually on the window. So here we go, coming around here, and the same with our fat guys at each side, our little side parts of our cacti. We'll put some lines in these. This is when it just starts to take on a little bit more of a shape. You're not having to guess quite so much what it is that we're actually looking at here. So here we go. Just again, very, very light touch. I'm not making it a solid line at all. I might put a little bit down here, and then within our cactus, because this is a lion cactus, I might put a couple little spikes here and there, not too many, just to kind of keep it looking like a happy cactus that it is. There we go. And then, just because I haven't done it yet, I'm going to move on here. I'm going to just show you how we would add the flowers on it. So I'm just going to wet this a little bit here, and I'm going to take a slightly thinner brush, again, totally saturated brush there. I'm going to take some of this bright orange and probably a little bit of pink as well. A little bit dried up now because I've left it out all afternoon. So there we go. And we're just very, 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 very roughly adding some flowers to the top of our cactus. So I'm going to do the same over here, brush it with water, and just let that do its work. I'm going to add the orange because I quite like the way the orange just spreads with it. There we go. When you come back to me in just 1 second, I will show you the final part, which is where we're going to add a little bit of just baseline. I'm just going to do that using dots around the bottom. So we'll do that in just 1 second. I'm going to finish these off first of all. The final paint part of this process is to add this little bit of base right here. You see on this inspiration picture, they've got this kind of where the sand is, I guess, or the soil. So I'm going to do that exactly the same way as I did earlier using my brush, but I'm actually going to use a couple of different brushes. So this bigger brush, which is the brush we used on the green, I'm going to use the end of this, and I am going to spray, again, make this fabric nice and damp, spray it there. And I'm going to do the same thing again. There you can see I've got lots and lots of paint on there. I'm going to dip it in my water, and then we're just going to make random dots. And then when I've done that, I will use the smaller brush to make smaller dots. And that's all I'm going to do on this bit. Now I'm going to move on, paint the second curtain, and when you come back to me, let's see what the next step is. So the final step in this process, I'm just running a hot iron set onto the cotton setting over my dried paint, just to set it. If you want to, you can give it a spray with some easy peasy spray wax from Dixie Belle. I'm not going to do that because these are probably going to go through the washing machine a couple of times and they'll fade slightly, but they will look fantastic. The cacti will look as good as the day you painted it. So I'm just running this hot iron over just to give them a nice smoothness and just to set that paint. And then we'll move on to hanging. So having ironed these curtains in the 30-degree heat here in Toronto, I've hung them up at the window and I am absolutely thrilled. What a simple, very easy to make. You don't really need any special materials, just paint, some cotton curtains and some water. And we have got these beautiful hand-painted curtains, which I think would look good in any room, really. Frankly, I think they're absolutely stunning. They turned out better than I could have expected. I hope you've enjoyed this DIY. My name's Fiona DeBell. You can find me at fionadebell.com. Hope you enjoyed watching and will join me next time here on Hometalk.
Let's head over to Dollar Tree and we're going to grab a paper towel holder. Let's all run down to the hardware store and grab us a wood round. This wood round, we're going to turn it to the right side there, but we got to sand the edges. It feels nice and smooth on the top, but the edges get a little rough. Let's go ahead and put some 80 grit on there, and then we're going to switch over to 220 and get it all nice and even. These wood rounds are made with pine, which is considered a softwood. So we've got to condition the wood. We can use a pre-wood conditioner on this and it looks a little wet. That's what we want. Go ahead and get that all done. Don't forget to get the edges. Let it dry about 30 minutes to an hour. Once it dries, it's time to put on some stain. Use the stain of your choice. I like to go dark every time, so I'm going to use a little bit of walnut that was sitting in my cabinet. I'm going to go ahead and stain this all the way using a towel and then take off any excess. Now, we're going to get 3 of those paper towel holders and we're going to set them in place. What we need to do is paint them. I like this hammered look from the spray paint that I got. I'm going to spray paint it little squirts at a time. That's what you want to do because we don't want it dripping down the metal. So if it takes 2 small coats, that's better than 1 thick coat. Once we get it all painted, let it dry. Now we got to curve the edges a little bit and bend them. Don't bend them too far. Just get them a little 20 degrees, and we're going to do all three at the same angle. Now we're going to put them in place on the bottom of our wood round. Put them in place, and I'm going to take these little electric hooks that I got out of the hardware store, and I'm going to put 4 all the way around each side of these circles here. What that's going to do is I'm going to mark them with a pen, and once I got them marked, I'm going to go ahead and pre-drill. Now, just a little tap of the drill bit is all you need. We don't want to go all the way through. Once I got them done, I'm going to go ahead and put little tiny screws in and hold these clips in place. Once I get all 4 on each one of these done, it's really secure, but I'm going to go and measure at the 8 and 6 inch mark on these legs, and I'm going to put a little dab of hot glue, and then I'm going to take some twine. I'm going to set it there and let the hot glue set up. It only takes about 15 seconds. Cut off the excess, and then I'm going to start wrapping it all the way around. Starting at that 6 inch mark, I'm going to work all the way up to the 8. But halfway up, let's put a little bit more glue on just to keep this string and hold it in place. I'm going to go ahead and put it right around there, let it set, let it hold, and then continue wrapping. Once I get to the end, it's just going to take a little bit more hot glue, put that on there, hold it in place, cut off the excess, then I'm going to switch over and just cut off all those little whiskers that are showing up. Once I get all that done, this thing's ready. I'm going to set it in place and I'm going to decorate it. It actually turned out really nice. Look at this. It just is awesome. And I made this all by myself from Home Depot and legs that I got that are paper towel holders from the Dollar Tree. I hope this encouraged you to build your own leg stand table.
I grabbed this towel rod for the best kitchen hack. I put one end of the towel rack on and marked where the other side of the towel rack needed to be. For this side, I used drywall anchors to ensure a strong hold. Then I grabbed some black shower curtain rings, placed them on the towel rack, and hung my favorite cutting boards and frying pan.
I picked up these containers at Dollar Tree. They can be found in the travel section. The first thing I'm going to do is use some nice and strong super glue or E6000 and attach the magnets to the bottom of each one of the containers. While that's drying, I'm going to upcycle an old picture frame. On the back of this frame, I am going to add some magnets. Now I'm going to use these glittery black stickers I found just to put the word spices on the bottom of the frame. So I'm using a Sharpie to write the name of spices that I use most often right on top. Now it's time to fill up the jars. I'm going to put up the frame first where I want it, and then I can just stick the jars right on the fridge inside the frame.
Today's project starts with a few end tables that you can pick up from your local Walmart or IKEA, and they're simple to put together. Put a wheel on the bottom to make this table mobile. Get a nut that will fit on the end of those threads, and we've got to glue it to the bottom of the leg. But we want to make sure we add a washer to give it some strength, because we're going to use a 2-part epoxy. We're going to take the epoxy and put it around the edge of the bolt next to the washer, and on the bottom of our table, turn it on its side, and we've got to glue a piece of strip of wood on the bottom. Go ahead and just put some around the hole on the bottom of the leg, and we're going to take that little invention we did with the washer and the nut and stick it right on there. Make sure it gets nice and secure. That allows us now to screw the wheel into the bottom of the leg. Gotta join these 2 tables together. Once you get it all on there on all 4 corners, go ahead and stick the other table right on top. Once it dries up in about 20 minutes, it's super strong and it's time to paint it. Went ahead and put these 3 boards in for the base, and they sit there really nice. It also gives some strength, but it's time to finish the top. I want to use some contact paper.
Under a countertop, grab a curtain rod and 2 heavy-duty command hooks. Measure the placement for the 2 command hooks and hang the rod at your desired height. Arrange everyday items like cake cups, mugs, pictures, or plants using S-hooks on the rod.
Are you tired of those overcrowded cabinets? Grab you 2 cake pans from Dollar Tree and a bag of marbles. Take one of those other cake pans, put it on top, and look at it spin. It's perfect for organizing spices, salts, and peppers.
You want to make sure that you have a nice clean surface. Rubbing alcohol is a good option. You'll need some sort of stencil and line that up and then just press down firmly. And it's really important here that you maintain the best seal possible. You'll want to take some painter's tape and put it around the surrounding edges. Now that you have your stencil in place, it's time to apply the etching cream. I typically do about a 5-minute time to allow it to sit, and then we'll rinse it off. Run it under a stream of warm water and just allow the cream to gently rinse off. Once you have the etching cream all rinsed off, you can go ahead and remove the stencil and the tape. But we're gonna take it one step further, and I'm going to be using this Rub and Buff product to add some color to it.
How about underneath the kitchen sink? There is nothing worse than trying to get a bag to reline the trash can. What a mess. Grab a curtain rod, grab the garbage bag, mark it, cut it right there at the mark. Put the ends back on to keep it safe, put the brackets on, and look at that.
Let's start organizing inside your cabinets. Press this onto the cabinet door in this case and hold for 10 seconds. Now, your oven mitts, folders, and silicone mats are ready to be stored. If you ever change your mind, you can easily remove the hanger simply by pushing up and taking it off. I chose to replace the first hanger with this metal hook. I replaced the oven mitts with a cooling rack and a pan guard that fit just as perfect in this spot. Are you always losing your measuring utensils? Simply place a clear command hook on the outside of an airtight container and you'll always have your measuring utensils right at hand. I use mine for baking supplies. Simply take a large command hook and press it all the way to the left of the cabinet door. Then take your paper towel and measure to size. Firmly press down on the command hook, securing it to the opposite side of the cabinet door. Take a piece of string and run it through the middle of the paper towel holder and simply hang it on your 2 new command hooks. It's as easy as that. Already have a place to store your paper towels? Simply take off the paper towel roll from your 2 command hooks and replace it with a plastic shopping bag. Here's a simple storage solution for all your recyclable bags. If you didn't already know, the little tabs on the side of your saran wrap or tinfoil are meant to be pressed in to lock the roll in place. Using a command hook, simply stick the prong through the hole and press it firmly on your surface. I chose the side of my refrigerator.
To start, you'll need 3 Parsons end tables, and I purchased mine at Walmart. I put 2 of the tables together. It was really easy, all you had to do was screw in the legs. For the 3rd table, I didn't use the legs, and I drilled the holes just a little bit bigger so I could fit rolling wheels in them. Use some E6000 or glue of your choice, and put it on the bottom of the legs on 2 of your tables. Stack your tables on top of the tabletop with the wheels.
Are you looking for a cool, simple design for those knives to hang on? Take a strip of oak and some magnets, and we're going to use what's called a Forstner bit. Make sure it's deep enough for the magnets to sit in, but no deeper than that. Take some of that wood glue and place it all over the oak. We're going to glue a second strip. Use some clamps to hold it down. We're going to let that dry for a little bit. Are you a little unnerved when it comes time for snack time? Always trying to go through the bin, trying to find a solution? Take a shoe hanger and we're going to put it on the back of a pantry door or a cabinet. All you need is some simple hooks. You can then take the shoe holder and put it up and it holds your snacks easy to get to.
When I came across this labeling hack, I just had to share it. Type out names for labels that will keep you organized. Print out your label list on plain, ordinary white paper. Cut the words apart, leaving a little bit of white space surrounding the text. Now, take some clear packing tape and lay pieces of tape over each word. It helps if you put a coin on the end of the tape so you can lift it easily later on. With the edge of a debit or credit card, press against the taped word and rub vigorously across the top of the tape. Trim off any excess tape with scissors, then simply drop it in a bowl of water. Make sure it is completely submerged and let it soak for a couple of minutes. Once it has soaked for a bit, lift it from the water and start to rub across the back of the word with your fingers. The paper pulp will eventually come off from the tape, but the text will still be there.
Take an X-Acto knife and remove the lid flaps. Take hemp rope and a hot glue gun to begin wrapping the rope around the box. Take twine and begin gluing it to the perimeter of the bottom of the box. Take balsa wood oval or circle shapes and paint them with black paint. Print words to be displayed on the side of the box. Cut them out and use pencil to cover the back of the paper. Then trace the font on the balsa wood. Use a chalkboard pen or a white paint pen to cover the pencil traced font. Use a hot glue gun to attach the labels to the side of the box.
and I headed to my local craft store and picked up a wooden crate. I decided to paint it a beautiful shade of white, just using my favorite Zinsser primer. So I decided to paint the whole entire crate, making sure that I got in between all the rungs on the crate. Then, to give my crate a bit of antique, rustic look, I came in with this gray wax, and then using a lint-free cloth, I rubbed it on the edges and then let it sit for a bit, and then rubbed it in further just to really blend it in at the edges. And then this gives it just a little bit of a worn look. I used my cutting machine to cut my own stencil and place it on the one side, and then I just used some black acrylic paint to dab on and stencil in this unique number 3 look for old world vintage crate look. Next, I took the stool that I picked up at the antique mall and I removed the bottom feet. They just screwed in, so they were easy to unscrew and take apart. And then I decided that I wanted to give this a fresh new farmhouse look. So I actually had this IKEA pillowcase that I picked up quite a while ago at IKEA, and I never used it for anything. It has these neat button closures that I opened, and I just slid the ottoman inside and rebuttoned it back up. I folded the pillowcase over the edges of the ottoman, and then I used a crown stapler to secure it in place so that it was tightly fitted around the ottoman. Then I flipped my crate over so it was right side up, screwing into each 4 of the corners to make a hole, and then I just screwed the legs that were originally on my ottoman into the top part of my crate, so that when I flip this over, this is actually going to be the bottom, and I now have some new feet, well, new to me feet on the bottom. And then I'm going to take my pillow case that has my little ottoman inside, and I'm just going to set it on top of the crate. And then here we have my finished project. This is just a neat way to repurpose an old ottoman and reuse it with a crate to give it that antique look and a nice place where you can rest your feet at the end of a long day.
some collapsible storage cubes from Walmart and some paint stir sticks. Measure the width of your storage cube. Using a utility knife, score the measurement line. Make these cuts on all of your paint sticks. Sand the cut ends of the sticks so there are no rough edges. Wipe some wood stain on the top and sides of each paint stick. Let them dry completely. Lay the paint sticks on the side of an open storage cube. Start to glue each stir stick to the storage cube panel with a hot glue gun.
Head on over to your local Walmart and grab their $7 mirror. Place the mirror directly in the center of the table just as you would a regular table runner. Clean off the mirror with some glass cleaner to remove any fingerprints or smudges. Then start styling your table.
Take a fabric placemat and flip it over. Using the storage cube insert, trace around the insert on the placemat. Once traced, cut the fabric square from the placemat. With a hot glue gun, glue the placemat square to the side of the open storage cube. Take some favorite yarn and make a pom-pom with a pom-pom maker. Using a large needle or upholstery needle, thread one tail of the pom-pom and insert it through the upper center of the glued placemat through the storage cube, and knot the two tails together on the inside of the storage cube.
I ran to my local Walmart and grabbed 2 matching pots, one bigger than the other. First thing I did was level an area in the front that would be in direct sunlight and put the bigger pot in first. Next, I grabbed an old bucket upside down into the bigger pot. Make sure that it's centered. Next, I grabbed a flower pot base. I wanted to make sure that I turned it with the lip side down. We're going to take the smaller pot that we got and place it on the center of that pot. I want to grab some local rocks and place them around the edge. Next, I got out a new solar powered fountain that I bought for $10. It floats in the water because it's got a float on the bottom, and it works great in direct sunlight. With this fountain comes some plastic spacers. What this does is make sure that the fountain stays in the center of the pot. Once you got it marked, you can go ahead and just trim it with a pair of scissors. Put some nice clear water inside. Go ahead and place the fountain inside. Once the direct sunlight hits it, voila!
Let's run on down to Walmart, and it's time to grab your favorite inexpensive bucket. We got to get those handles off. Next, we're going to take that bucket and flip it over. We need to set in 2 strips of wood that are going to fit right on the edge. Next, stick them on there, make sure they fit. Then you can use some hot glue. Just flip it over and press it against the plastic. So do that to both pieces right on the edge, and just hold it down till it sets. Next, flip the bucket over, and what you're going to do is grab just some small little screws. So just take your drill and put it right in. 2 or 3 in each strip of wood will be just right, and that's going to hold it in place. Now it's time to put on the wheels, and we're going to mark it 1 inch from each side of the wood. We're going to put 4 of these legs on, and we're going to drill it. Now it's time to take that hot glue, put it right on the edge of the hole there, and put the leg on. Look at this. They are excellent. Now it's time to go ahead and decorate the bucket. Just take again our favorite hot glue, put it right on the edge, just stick it right on there. Just go ahead and set it all the way around, and we're going to go around the whole bucket. Once you get that on, it's time to take a little bit of your inexpensive fabric, cut about 12 inches wide. We're going to use that hot glue again, and we're going to fold over the edge. What we're going to do is fold it over the bucket. It's going to cover all that plastic. Get that glue right on that last bit of rope right there. We're going to take this all the way around the bucket.
You want to pick up 2 bowls. Make sure they are ceramic or glass and that they are heat proof. I took them home and I'm going to give them a coat of spray paint. Once the paint is dry, these bowls have a really nice textured look. I'm just going to use some really strong glue to adhere them together. In the top bowl, I am going to add 3 wicks. I'm just going to use a little bit of hot glue to secure them to the bottom. Then I'm going to grab 2 wooden skewers and wrap the wick around the skewers. This is just going to hold everything in place. Great way to make your own candles is to reuse existing candle wax. I have a couple of these Dollar Tree tall pillar candles, and I'm going to place them in some boiling water. Now make sure you're wearing gloves. These can get really hot, and I'm just going to gently boil this until all the wax is melted. Pour the wax from all the candles into a metal container with a handle. I'm opting to add a little essential oil for some scent, and now we're just going to pour that melted wax. Then you're going to want to walk away for about 24 hours. When it is completely set, you can trim the wicks down and use your candle. let's create an anthropology dupe. So I'm gonna grab a couple different styles of this pretty paper and I'm gonna cut it into 4-inch squares. Now I'm gonna paint a thin coat of Mod Podge onto a white ceramic tile. Now I'm gonna press these two together, seal them in really good, get any bubbles out. Now I'm gonna come back and add a top coat of Mod Podge. I'm gonna repeat this with about 35 tiles. I cut a piece of plywood to size and I'm gonna paint the top using a white chalk paint. Now I'm gonna place a full-length mirror right in the middle. Now to attach the mirror to the wood, I'm using Gorilla Glue. Once I've got the mirror down, I'm adding this board and some weight, and I'm gonna let this set for 24 hours. Now I'm gonna dry fit the tiles into a pattern around the mirror. For the corners, where I have a little bit of a smaller space, I'm actually just gonna use a square of paper. So the first thing I'm doing is adding a little bit of water to the wood with a paintbrush. Now for the tiles, I'm using Gorilla Glue again, and then the two are pressed together. And I'm gonna let the whole thing set for 24 hours. Grab a plastic bin from Walmart for this project. I'm going to start by drilling a few holes into the side of the bin. This is going to be for handles down the road. Then I'm going to flip the bin over and I'm going to drill 4 holes, one in each corner of the plastic bin. I want to dress this bin up, so I picked up some gray and white patterned fabric. And I've cut it down to size so that it is the right height of the bin. Now I'm going to use some spray adhesive to adhere the fabric to the plastic. When I get to the corners, I am going to cut up the side, and then I can just fold these two pieces over each other, creating a really nice looking seam. To add the handles, I'm going to locate the hole that I drilled with my finger and then just poke through the fabric with a pair of scissors. Now I can thread the jute through and tie a knot on the inside to secure it in place. Now I'm going to add some feet to the bottom to raise this up off the ground and just make it look a little nicer.
Grab some hot glue and put a bead of glue along one side of your lampshade, and then add some twine or jute. And we're going to wrap that around the lampshade until we cover the entire thing. After you have all your tassels made, we are going to add these to the bottom of our lampshade. And I decided to hot glue these. You could use a needle and thread and tie them and sew them on the edge, but this worked out perfect. You are going to simply trim off the excess tails.
Get a styrofoam cooler. I found mine at Walmart. Take a piece of cardboard, trace with a Sharpie, and cut with an X-Acto blade to make it slightly smaller than the lid of the cooler. Take a piece of upholstery foam and trace with a Sharpie and cut with an X-Acto blade. Hot glue the upholstery foam to the top of the lid with the cardboard on top of that. Take a blanket, rug, or textile of your choice and cut it to size to the top of the lid. Fold and hot glue to the lid and trim the excess. Use an old sheet, cut to size, and wrap around the cooler base. Hot glue all the way around the base of the cooler and trim off the excess. Cut the remainder of the blanket, fold over, and hot glue the edges to clean them up. Wrap the blanket pieces around the base with hot glue. Add tassels from the blanket around the top of the base of the cooler to give it a boho look.
I went to the store and grabbed some hula hoops along with black matte spray paint. I took the hoops out to my garden and decided to attach them to my house using small poultry staples. I then slipped a piece of pipe cleaner through the hole and attached the hoop, twisting the ends together. I used black electrical tape to join the hoops together. To attach the plant, I carefully moved each stem, bundling some together and following the curve of the hoop.
I'm going to start with a brick of floral foam, and as you can see, I added a very generous amount of hot glue. We're going to just place this into the bottom of an urn. Now I'm going to work in our first flower greenery combo. So this is our geranium spray. We have these in all sorts of colors available at nicksseasonaldecor.com. We gave it a few minutes to harden. We're going to just simply poke that right into the container. I'm going to work in 3 today, and here is our third. Now we have some of these hot pink geraniums. We're going to do the same process, work in 3 of these, and I think they're going to add a nice contrast to that lighter pink, just like so. Now we're going to work in these really pretty velvet heart sprays. And of course, since we have 2 different shades of pink geraniums in this arrangement, we're going to work in the pink. And we'll work in some on the sides and just arrange them. These are wired, so you can manipulate them and shape them. And I'm going to go heart crazy today. We're going to work in a bunch of these. So let's place another one on this side for balance. And here is how it turned out, you guys. Super easy to do. We only have 2 ingredients, and I used a leftover pot from my garden. And of course, living in Massachusetts, it's very snowy right now, so at least I can enjoy something beautiful in my home. So this is just standing in my living room, and as I mentioned before, you can remove the heart sprays and then just have a beautiful basket of light pink and hot pink geraniums. And as I mentioned before, geraniums come in so many different colors, so you can switch this up for any season and holiday. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm Nick Kretikos of Nick's Seasonal Decor, and you're watching me on Hometalk.
Grab a glass bowl from the dollar store. I'm going to place it upside down on a wood round. Then I'm going to surround the bowl with wood beads. I found these strings of beads at the dollar store. Place a bead of glue around the bowl and then attach the beads. Once the glue is completely dry, I can pull the bowl out of the center. Now I picked up another smaller bowl at Dollar Tree. I am going to place this on the bottom of the wood round to create a pedestal. Now I'm going to grab a larger wood bead and just fill the holes with some air dry clay to create a solid round ball. Give it a coat of spray paint. With everything dry, I'm gluing the larger bead to the bottom of the glass bowl. Then I can just place this bowl right on top of that pedestal.
I have this area in the front of my house that I want to beautify, so I grabbed a bowl from the Dollar Tree and put it over to make sure it fits. Then I went to Home Depot and grabbed some spray foam. Next, what I'm going to do is put the bowl down on a garbage bag, and I'm going to grab the spray foam and start covering all the bowl up. And we're going to go layer over layer. Now, this took about 3 cans, but I want to make sure before I put the next layer on, that's a little bit dry to the touch. Once you get it on, you want to give it about 24 hours. The next step is we got to carve the foam. Now you're going to shape this all over. Next step, I'm going to pour some water into a bucket. I'm using Cemental. What we're going to do is mix it. You want to be able to shape it and use it almost like a clay on top of the foam. Go ahead and just start adding it to the foam and just keep smoothing it on. For the second layer, I made it a little more runny. Just go ahead and smooth it in. If it looks a little rough, you can grab a chip brush, dip it in some water, and then you can start smoothing out the concrete that you put on. Now let it dry, and then I took some black paint, watered it down, and I'm going to add a little bit of color to the rock. So I'm going to add some brown to it also. You can go with any color you want. Now I'm ready to cover up the pipe that I want to have hidden.
Pick up 1 or 2 clear plastic bowls from Dollar Tree. Take a wood burning tool to create a hole in the bottom of the bowl. Take a light kit from Amazon and thread the socket through the hole. Make sure it's secure and add a light bulb.
Head to your local dollar store and pick up a clear plastic bowl, a metal flower vase, a floral foam square, and some faux flowers. Pull a wood candle lid from a used candle and remove the rubber ring. Spray paint this candle lid, the clear plastic bowl, and the metal flower vase. Use a strong adhesive and glue the candle lid to the bottom of the painted metal vase. Glue the painted bowl to the top of the candle lid. Give the entire footed pedestal bowl a light coat of white spray paint. Put some hot glue on the 4 corners of the square florist foam and glue it to the bottom of the bowl. Take pieces of faux greenery and stick them in and around the base. Next, take some bunches of faux flowers, stick the separated flowers into the florist foam. If you have any bare spots showing, fill those areas with a little green moss.
Check out these colorful bowls. You're gonna turn it upside down. You're gonna take that heat tool and just press down. And we're gonna wanna do that to a couple more of these. I'm just going to use this to trace. Start with one of the blue bowls and one of the clear ones. And I'm gonna take some Gorilla Clear Grip. You're gonna wanna put this on and then let it sit. Make sure that you get this exactly right. One more blue bowl. Let that sit right there. You see how you can see the battery packs down at the base? I'm going to take some ivy. See how you can disguise that a little bit. Decided to add a few white poppies.
I got both of my bowls from the Dollar Tree. So essentially what we're trying to do is we're gonna glue them base to base. I'm gonna be using E6000 and I'm gonna be using my hot glue gun. So I'm gonna be using chalk paint, honeycomb, folk art craft paint. We're gonna be putting some baking soda in here. Mixed, we're gonna apply it to the bowl. All right, so we're gonna be using a stone colored Rust-Oleum textured finish paint. We are going to be grabbing about 4 of these candles from Dollar Tree. We are going to melt them
and I took the wicks out and I placed them where I wanted. I'm using skewers to secure it in place. I'm going to be adding my melted wax into this, and I'm actually going to be using a scented lavender.
First step is you're going to want to drill a hole for drainage, and I'm just going to drill straight into that hole in the middle. And then we're going to get our bigger bit, and I'm going to take a junk brush to bond with the bowl above it. I've got my first strand of beads. I'm just going to take these one line at a time and just snip off the extra beads. And I'm going to repeat this process. I've got the stone texture applied. Now it's time to go in with my black spray paint.
We are going to start with 7 of these bowls. You're also going to need some E6000. Just basically go around. You're going to place it on top. We're going to do this again. So I'm going to give these a little bit of time to cure. I'm going to be taking my E6000 and I'm going to go around the top of this, stack it on top, and we're going to do this one more time. I'm using Dixie Belle Vintage Duck Egg Chalk Paint. So I'm actually going to use E6000 for this step. Line it up. And then we're gonna let that sit until it dries. And we are gonna trace around the inside of the hole that I created. You actually will not need to paint the underside, just the sides and the top. I'm gonna start with the bottom part, tilt that up. So we are going to take a solar light, placing it over, put the top part of our solar light, and it's gonna nestle right in.
You're going to need some dollar store solar lights. Flip the bowl upside down, and we need to remove the label. Next, I'm gonna focus on the solar light. So we just take the stem off. We're not even gonna need that. You need to open up the solar light and pull out the tag so that the solar light works. Then you can place that back on, and this part is ready to be used. This will be the base of our project. What I'll be using for this project for weight are these dollar store rocks. So I'm gonna be placing them inside. For the next step, I'm gonna place the solar light in top like this. I'll go ahead and add a few more rocks to this. So what I'm gonna do is add a little dab of hot glue on each corner, like so. I'm gonna take that bowl and flip it upside down and place it right there on top so it's centered. So just to show you, if I remove this out, you can see here, I would be able to pull this off and replace this easily with another dollar store solar light if this burns out at some point.
Run to Dollar Tree and pick up one large plastic bowl. Use a palette knife and drywall spackle to apply to the exterior of the bowl. Create a hole in the bottom of the bowl in the size of a light socket. Finish spackling around the hole. Add Dixie Belle's Slick and Stick to the inside of the bowl with a paintbrush. Take Modern Masters metallic gold paint, at least 2 layers. Sand the surface of the spackled exterior. Take Rub and Buff and buff into the surface of the bowl interior. Take a hanging light kit from Amazon. Add a light bulb of choice.